Hungary votes for change and in favour of the pro-EU candidate for Prime Minister, Péter Magyar, and his party as they take a two-third majority in Parliament, enough to make sweeping changes to policies put in place during the 16 years of authoritarian rule by Viktor Orbán. Magyar, once an ally of Orbán, campaigned on a promise to rebuild Hungary's relationship with the European Union and with NATO. Orbán has already conceded defeat. The pro-Russian leader, who had received the direct and clear support from the Trump administration, lost favour, among other things, due to economic stagnation in the country. Well, France 24's Clovis Casali is in Budapest. We can cross over to him now live. Clovis, give us a better idea of just how significant Péter Magyar's victory is.
Well, these celebrations lasted late into the night here on the banks of the Danube, and the streets haven't yet got cleaned, with trucks currently trying to clean up, because it was a huge party, I can tell you, last night, with tens of thousands of Péter Magyar's supporters here celebrating a victory, a landslide victory, a historic result, the highest turnout, voting turnout, with nearly 80%. And Péter Magyar set to get, with his party TISA, two-thirds at least of the seats here in Parliament. That means he will have the sweeping powers he wanted to bring the structural reforms, the constitutional changes, to be able to fight corruption, carry out investigations, and bring back again independent media in Hungary. That's what Péter Magyar had vowed to do during the campaign. He also said that we have liberated Hungary and it's the end of an electoral autocracy. That's what he said when he addressed his supporters here on the banks of the Danube last night. A few hours ago, I should say, I was talking with his supporters, who were telling me, we know things aren't going to change overnight, but at least now we have hope. And many people here were young people who never knew any other Prime Minister of Hungary but Viktor Orbán, and that's why they wanted change, and now they've got it.
One of the main things outside of Hungary that people are looking at is Hungary's relationship with the European Union. How's that likely to change?
Well, Viktor Orbán and Péter Magyar have very different views on Europe and how relations should be with Brussels. Viktor Orbán always rejected the authority of Brussels. Péter Magyar, a conservative, now set to become a prime minister, has a very different vision. He wants to strengthen ties with European partners. He knows he needs to improve relations with Brussels, not least because he wants some money back. You have around 18 billion euros of EU funds currently frozen due to sanctions over a lack of fight against corruption, problems with the state of law here under Viktor Orbán's Hungary. And Péter Magyar vowed to do all he can to get that money back from Brussels. Of course, his victory is also bad news for many populist or far-right leaders across Europe. Giorgia Meloni in Italy, Marine Le Pen in France, just to name a few, who had in Viktor Orbán a key ally in that so-called patriotic bloc, a far-right alliance on the European level.
Clovis Casali in Budapest, thanks very much indeed. Well, for more insight on it all, we can speak now to former Minister of Education for Hungary, a man who worked as Secretary of State for Development Policy related to EU funds and who is currently a senior visiting researcher at the Central European University, Bálint Magyar. Thanks so much for your time. Can I start simply by clearing something up? You do have the same surname as the election winner. Any relation? No.
Not kinship relation between us.
OK, that's good to know. So now I've read some of your thoughts before this election. You said it was a last chance for Hungary. So how are you feeling when you see the results of that vote?
Well, it was a marvelous election, what we had, and an overwhelming victory. The stake of the election was not simply whether there will be a government change in Hungary or not, but whether we can sweep away the regime of Orbán, what I describe as a mafia state. And even Péter Magyar used in this campaign several times describing the regime that it's a state criminal organization, a mafia state, mafia government, Fidesz mafia. And this is what brought together the people as well, because not just the bad economic performance of the government in the last 4 years, what bothered the people in Hungary, but that it not just corruption in a traditional term, but in the Hungarian autocracy had a special character, namely a political enterprise captured the state, the economy, and the oligarchs themselves, and concertedly operated the whole state apparatus as a criminal organization.
Péter Magyar, however, he was part of the Fidesz party until just a few years ago. Can you tell us more about him?
Yes, this is like because the regime works on that way that like a clan, like a mafia clan, anybody who wants to belong it must be adopted and cannot leave freely from it. And most of these persons involved in it, they are corrupt. This is then like a ticket to enter to this clan structure. But Péter Magyar, in spite of the fact that he had jobs within this system, he did not commit any criminal act. He was not a corrupt person. This is what made possible for him to jump out from the regime and at the same time to build up a wide popular movement, the TISA movement, and just to abolish not the Orbán regime, but the old opposition parties as well, which were practically domesticated parties and a part of this political economic criminal organization.
Just to focus a little bit more on Magyar, I mean, I'm reading that, we're all reading that he's very pro-EU compared to Orbán, but he's also anti-migration, if I understand correctly. I mean, how different do you think his politics will be to Orbán?
You have to understand that on one hand, the ideological panels, what he uses is central right ideological panels. But the composition of his supporters is very peculiar, because according to a public opinion poll this January, it revealed that about 43% of his supporters consider themselves liberals, 22% left-wing people, only 11% right-wing conservatives, and 10% belonging to green ideologies. So when it was the task how to overthrow the regime in Hungary, he had to focus that constituency, which was the strongest supporter of Orbán. And this constituency was mainly the rural population, the less educated, the elderly people, and the poorer people, who were really the targets of the mass party Fidesz propaganda. And therefore, Péter Magyar consciously avoided those ideologically dividing topics which should reduce his potential support. And I think it was the only way to build up such a wide constituency and group of supporters which could reach this overwhelming victory.
Indeed, an overwhelming victory, as you say, a super majority they're calling it. He has over two-thirds of the parliament. So what do you think his first action will be? It sounds like he has the power now to make sweeping changes to policies in Hungary.
Yes, he even in his campaign launched a program, the title of which was Road to the Prison, which meant that he wanted to finish that epoch in Hungary, that there is no accountability of political actors. So therefore, his first action, what he announced even yesterday evening, that Hungary would join to the European Attorney's Office, the Olaf. And it's a very important sign that he wants to crash this criminal organization. The regime change in Hungary, which is the third one now, because we had the first one in 1890 when we turned a communist dictatorship into a liberal democracy. The second one was in 2010, 2011, when with a vast majority, says in the vast majority in the parliament, Orbán transformed Hungary from a liberal democracy into a patronal democracy and a mafia state. The third one, we have to transform it from a mafia state into a liberal democracy again. Therefore, there are three pillars of this regime change. One is the restitution of the constitutional state. The second is abolishing the state criminal organization led by Orbán. And the third is abolishing the client relation to Russia, that Hungary would act as an agent, as the most valuable asset of Russia, subversing the EU, subversing the NATO partners.
Okay, it'll be interesting to see what action we see and how quickly. Orbán, for his part, was quick to concede defeat after those election results. What do you think? Where do you think he might go from here?
Yes, it was a very dangerous situation because Orbán's criminal organization had nowhere to retreat. At the same time, there was a chance that there will happen the acceleration of coercive actions in Hungary, using even physical force. But I think he was late with this. And in the last weeks of the campaign, it became clear that there were some members of the secret services and the Hungarian army as well, who step up openly against the government, and somehow everybody had the feeling that at least 80–90% of the secret services, the police and the army, are not backing the Orbán regime. So if Orbán would have chosen such a such a coercive means to suppress by physical force the result of the elections, he would not have enough support in these in the armed forces, I would say. So from this respect, the situation is very much different that of what we can witness in, let us say, Belarus or Russia. And Orbán, who about 16 years ago just wanted to create such an election system of extreme disproportionality, which served to maintenance of his regime. Now the structure turned against him because Péter Magyar and the party list got 54% of the votes and Orbán 38%. But with this 54% of the votes, we could reach more than two-thirds majority in the parliament now.
Indeed, the system he created going against him. Finally, you know, we saw last week the United States sending their vice president. We had a very clear support from the United States for Orbán going into this election. What impact, if any, do you think that had on us?
It had no impact at all, I think, because Trump is not too popular in Hungary on one hand, and G.D. Vance even not known, especially in the main supportive constituency of Orbán. But I would say that Orbán's visit to the United States, to Trump, and G.D. Vance's visit to Hungary, just supporting Orbán's campaign, this was the most expensive selfie. These were the most expensive selfies in the Hungarian history.
Bálint Magyar, we'll have to leave it there, but thanks so much for joining us on France 24 and bringing us your insight and your view on it all. Much appreciated.
Thank you very much.